So, Roger, you've chosen a really captivating sci-fi movie, In Time, directed by Andrew Niccol, starring Justin Timberlake, Amanda Seyfried, Cillian Murphy, amongst others, released in the autumn of 2011. And when you look at the reviews online and the reaction from people, there seems to be two groups almost. Those who believe this is one of the most underrated sci-fi movies of all time, and those who think, how is it that I've not seen this yet? And I will confess, I pretty much belong to the second group. I only saw this recently. Actually, it was during the pandemic. I went through the Amazon Prime kind of library of movies, creating a watch list, thinking, well, I'm going to have a lot of time to kill and being stuck at home. And In Time was in that list, and we finally watched it with Denise, and we absolutely loved it. But I just didn't know this movie existed.
No, we saw it. We didn't go to the cinema to see it, but we saw it when it came out on Blu-ray. In fact, we did buy the Blu-ray, and it's an extremely good film. And I absolutely love the basic premise of it. I mean, we're in a future society, and everybody in that future society is genetically modified so that when they get to the age of 25, their body clock effectively, their aging clock stops. So pretty much everybody in the film looks like they are 25. They don't grow older at that from any point later on in their lives. But what they are given at the age of 25 is just one more year to live. And that one more year appears on their wrist as a series of bright glowing neon numbers. And those numbers count down the seconds. So in a year's time, bang, their heart stops, whatever, and they just fall dead. And the concept of the movie is that they've got to buy themselves more time. Now, the way they buy themselves more time is that they get paid in time. So if they go and get a job, their wage effectively is more time. But the downside as well is that if they want to buy a coffee, or they want to buy food, or they want to get on a bus, or they want to get on a plane, they've got to pay for that journey or that food with some time that gets deducted from their total. So you can imagine that sort of tension that it creates when somebody is getting close to only having an hour or two left and maybe having to buy something, or they've got a bill to pay. It could literally mean the end of their life. And I just find it a concept which is absolutely mind-boggling to get your head around. It's similar to a film from the 1970s called Logan's Run, where everybody died at the age of 30, and they were hunted down by these things called Sandmen if they tried to escape that date with destiny. And in this film, we have a series of timekeepers who run around after people who are abusing the system. But I just think the concept is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, we watched it and we thought this was a great movie, but very sinister.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what sci-fi movies can do sometimes, to be either a running commentary about what is happening in the present, or a warning about what's happening, could be happening in the near future. And I kind of knew about the director, but I had to look it up. I know the name from somewhere, and then of course then I remembered about Gattaca they did, some years prior. He was the writer on the Truman Show, and so on. So he seems to really, really enjoy. It feels to me like it could have been a novel written by Arthur C. Clarke, which is this is meant as a compliment, by the way. This idea of, let me invite you to reflect on signs of life in 2011, and essentially the future, whereby the allegory, the analogy is, people won't be able to access the health system fairly or equitably. People will have to do 2-3 jobs to be able to pay their bills and so on. There was generally that reflection as well, and the sense of sacrifice and the injustice about a society between the have and the have-nots and so on. I thought it was just a fantastic movie, and I almost wish for the creators that it'd been given more coverage, somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I found it very difficult to find any marketing material beyond the trailers and the posters, which we'll come to. But I love the fact you talked about it being almost an analogy of current society. I mean, it's probably more relevant now than it was 10 years ago, because we're hearing a lot in the media today about the widening gap between rich people and people who just have a difficulty making ends meet. And of course, that's being rammed home to us at the moment with the cost of living crisis and the fact that the cost of fuel, gas and electricity is just absolutely skyrocketing. And that's what this film is saying. You know, the people who are effectively in the ghetto are often running around with only a day left on their life clock, whereas the richer people living in the posh part of town, driving around in BMWs and limousines, you know, they've got hundreds of years on their arms. And that is a really stark nod to what might be happening about money in the world today.
You mentioned Logan's Run. By the way, I love the TV series as well of Logan's Run. It was just so good, so entertaining. The other movies that came to mind, oddly, perhaps because of the name, but also because of that split between the two groups, was The Time Machine. You know, between the Eloys and the Morlocks. And it's not new, you know, what In Time is exploring, but it's doing it its own unique way. And what has been interesting is back to what you were saying. By the way, this is a plea and a call to current filmmakers and film marketers. Can you please stop deleting everything off the internet or whatever? Because, of course, in 2011, there was an official website, which is no longer accessible. There were social media accounts, Facebook and Twitter in particular, but it was only used for a matter of months for the duration of the launch of the movie in the autumn 2011, and probably for the Blu-ray release as well. But there was nothing else to go after, so you came up with a genius idea anyway.
Yeah, now, obviously there's a trailer and there's some posters. And what I found intriguing was this would be a good lesson for us and hopefully informative for the listeners of the Two Geeks in the Marketing podcast, to actually look at whether the trailer sells the concept of the film. Now, let's face it, the basic premise, which I explained a few minutes ago, is actually quite complicated, isn't it? When you get to the age of 25, you know, your aging stops, etc., and you've got one more year to live unless you buy more and you lose it, blah, blah, blah. That's quite a lot of tech babble to get across to somebody in a trailer. And I just thought it would be fascinating to, A, ask ourselves what needs to be in a trailer, and secondly, does this trailer, actually we're going to watch two of them, do the two trailers for this film actually succeed in achieving those aims? Now, I thought what would be really interesting, Pascal, given your background as a movie producer, you know, tell us the bottom line, what is the point of a trailer other than to get bums on seats in cinemas, obviously?
Well, for me, and there's two types of trailers, and I think that's really important. And you and I've spotted sometimes the confusion. You've got the trailer you need to pull together to sell it to a distributor, whether that's domestic market, in this case the US, or foreign markets. And then you've got the trailer for the audiences, and they are two different constructs. Often the trailer for the distributors and for the trade, shall we say, gives far too much away, is far too long, and is usually there to convince somebody that, oh, by the way, if you were to cut a shorter trailer, or if you were to, you know, consider our film, you're definitely going to make some money from, you know, bums on seats. Whereas the trailer for the audiences, it needs to be a bit more enigmatic. It needs to sound the pace. It needs to make you care for the protagonist quite early on, and suggest, you know, what's in jeopardy here. You know, what is the threat? What is, you know, what are they up against, and what makes it so difficult? So that's kind of to begin with the differentiator, which I think is very, very important. The other thing that the trailer can do and should do, and we're going to be watching the first trailer in a moment, is also sell the cinematic and the sound design, because you are essentially promising to somebody who's going to pay, you know, in euros, pounds, or dollars, and other currencies, that in an hour and a half, 2 hours that they're going to be in your company, it is going to be a worthwhile experience. So the cinematography and the sound design and the dialogues even are part and parcel of what that trailer is meant to tease. 90 seconds, give or take, for a 2-hour experience. That's essentially, you know, the dichotomy. So let's begin with trailer number 1.
introduce my mother-in-law, Clara, my wife, Michelle, and my daughter, Sylvia.
Whoa, whoa, where's the rest?
Never met the quota.
My units are up from last week.
So is the quota.
Just once, I'd like to wake up with more time on my hand than hours in the day.
How old are you?
28.
I'm 105. But the day comes when you've had enough. If you had as much time as I have, what would you do with it?
Sure as hell wouldn't waste it.
The last time anyone saw him alive, there was over a century on that clock.
Well, follow the time.
His name is Will Salas.
You can't hide 100 years in the ghetto.
You know that time will get you killed.
Hey, Mom, I'm gonna get out of here.
I just wouldn't know what to do if I lost you.
I don't believe we've had the pleasure of your company before, Mr.
Salas. Will Salas.
I'm sorry to have to break up the party, Mr. West. I just need a word with your friend. This is my destiny.
Please take me home.
Can't do that.
Why?
You're keeping me alive. How can you live with yourself watching people die right next to you?
You don't watch. You close your eyes.
I'm gonna make them pay. I'm gonna take them for everything they've got. Come on, help yourselves!
Take the time, it's free.
You put enough time in the wrong hands, you upset the whole system. Let's hope so.
If this works, we gotta get more.
I can help you get all the time you want.
You know we're coming to get you.
His crime wasn't taking time. He was giving it away.
All right, Roger. So, what do you make, or what is officially, according to IMDb.com, trailer number 1 for In Time, released in 2011?
Well, the plus points are that I love the way that they use the same green typography that they use for the life clock that's on the forearm. So it's a sort of neon green color, and it flickers just like it does. It scrolls just like it does on the arm of the people. And of course, you do get a good feel for how the world looks and the contrast between the ghetto, the poorer people, the time poor people, and the richer people, the time rich people. But that's where the positives for me stop. I find this trailer a bit of a mess. It doesn't really give me much of a hint about what the plot's about. It talks about stealing time or giving away time a little bit, but we don't even seem to get introduced to the characters. We see the characters, but I don't get a feel for where their motivations are. I don't know what the jeopardy is. I don't really understand this whole idea of what the life clocks are about. So had I seen this trailer before going to see the film, it might have talked me out of going. And I might have actually thought, you know what, I will wait for it to come out on DVD or Blu-ray and I'll give this one a miss, because I just found it a bit of a mess.
Do you know what's interesting? These are the very words expressed by others online saying, I'm glad I saw In Time before I saw this trailer. It's absolutely fascinating. I think for me, it's a couple of things I wanted to kind of bring up to everybody's attention. And I realized that this is a little trickier if you're a podcast listener. You've not had the pleasure of watching the images, but there was a lot of reliance on copy on screen. So, it begins with following which I always love, when they kind of create the style of the movie by changing the colors of the logos. You have 20th Century Fox, Regency, one of the distributors, in that kind of gray monochrome style, suggesting a future that perhaps knowledge well. And what follows is about 30 seconds, segment 1, 30 seconds of text, followed by a scene that is meant to illustrate what the text is saying. So in a way, you're doubling up on the explanation, which makes it much longer. So you've got the text in the near future with years counting up, and then you've got scenes of people standing with their forearms with the what we can just distinguish to be numbers, and then you've got the crossfade to close up of the a baby's arm. So you see you're born with that almost in you. You do not age past 25, and then we're introduced to a mother-in-law, to a wife, and to a daughter by somebody off screen. Then move on to life is played out a minute at a time, and you have another scene, and this goes on across 6 kind of mini phrases and 6 kind of cut out from the movie, and it's just a bit long. And that's back to my argument that this may have been the trailer for the trailer for the audiences. And then that first segment is kind of brought to an end by the voice of the hero, played by Justin Timberlake. Just once, I would like to wake up with more time on my hands than hours in a day. And what is interesting about this first trailer, they kind of broken the rule, and rules, of course, are there to be broken, Roger, about what we call the hero's entrance. These are not my words. It's used by producers and script writers way before my time. But the hero's entrance has to be taken care of very, very well. Think the way Indiana Jones is introduced, in Raiders of the Lost Ark and so on. So the fact that the hero doesn't speak first is an interesting rule to break. We shall see. And then from that introduction, then we have about a minute of what I'm going to call the gift of time. So he meets a complete stranger, he's given more time than he should really rightly have, and then discover a world which is opulent, discover a world where people are literally immortals, and of course is introduced himself to the rules of the timekeeper, which are there to protect the system invented by rich people. And then what follows is a 45-minute basically montage. I've called it, with tongue-in-cheek, the race against time, with the song Destiny by Syntax from the 2004 album. And actually the word in Destiny doesn't make much sense compared to the movies and so on. So what we have here is a montage of 2.5 minutes where each segment it operates almost individually, but it doesn't actually belong. There's not the thread through that you would expect. Hence your feeling of mild confusion of thinking, well, why is the hero here in trouble? Well, he's got given years, if not centuries, to live. He can just go in hiding and all will be well. So yeah, you're right. It's an interesting construct, but I don't think it was designed for a public, an audience. No,
it just felt to me as if it was a bit of a runaround film, lots of car chases, a bit of glamour, a bit of sex, a lot more running around, and it doesn't really give you anything to go on. So shall we watch the second trailer?
Let's do that.
Something to have more time in my hand than hours in the day.
Where's the rest? Never met the quota.
My units are up from last week.
So's the quota. 2 hours.
It's always been an hour.
Now it's 2. Price went up.
It's a 2-hour walk. I have an hour and a half.
Then you better run.
The poor are meant to die. It's how the system works.
What the hell's that supposed to mean?
You really don't know, do you?
How old are you in real time? 28.
I'm 105. The truth is, there's more than enough time for everyone. There are men with 1 million years who almost live day to day.
For a few to be immortal, many must die. No one should be immortal if even one person has to die.
You're not from around here, are you?
Why would you doubt that?
You're a little different.
Come with me.
The cameras picked up suspicious behavior.
His name is Will Salas.
He shouldn't be there.
What are we gonna do? Steal?
Is it stealing if it's already stolen? I'm gonna make them pay. Come on, help yourselves!
Take the time, it's free.
Where did you get that?
have?
We can't have 1,000 years in the wrong hands. It could cripple the system.
I will stop him.
The problem is, everybody wants to live forever.
We're not meant to live forever.
We are the kids of the in-between. You know we're coming to get you.
Let's hope so. His crime wasn't taking time. He was giving it away.
Now, this one, to me, Pascal, is a lot better. Now, interestingly enough, I found this trailer on a YouTube channel for 20th Century Fox India, but I couldn't discover whether this trailer was made specifically just for India, or whether it indeed is another official trailer that isn't acknowledged on IMDb or anywhere else. But this one is cut together so much better, in my opinion. Now, interestingly, it uses very much similar scenes to the trailer we've already seen, but the first 15 to 20 seconds very well explains the concept of the life clock, really explains it easily, so that within those first 15 seconds, you get the concept. And then it makes total sense when they introduce later the concept that you're fighting to get that time you need, and the time poor people versus the time rich people, and the fact that Timberlake inherits a lot of time, and then what's he going to do with it? The fact that Timberlake is being hunted down by these timekeepers, and that gulf between rich and poor. And you immediately get more of a feel for the characters and their motivation and the jeopardy that they're in. So to me, this is almost like chalk and cheese, and this is so much better. And had I seen this trailer, I would definitely have gone to the cinema to see the film, because it made absolute perfect sense to me and gives you a reason to go, because it gives you characters you want to go and see what happens to them.
Yeah, and to your point, it does make sense that different territories and different cultures will have different trailers. That's the art of communication, right message, right audience, right time. For me, yeah, this is the trailer to get people to go to the cinema, or in good time to buy the Blu-ray. And the construct is different. Now, again, a little trickier for our podcast listeners, before people watching on video. You'll have recognized many of the scenes from trailer number 1, but cut a bit shorter, a bit differently. And the montage, it moves quickly. But to your point, the first segment, which is about to set the context of the world of the future, was literally half of the time, 15 seconds. They half the text. There was no dialogues as well in between the text, and the very first voice we hear is from the hero. Back to the sentence, just once I would like to wake up with more time on my hands than hours in a day, which then gives you the segue into the second segment, where you have the gift of time. But we are also introduced to this idea of the world where you earn time and you spend time. And they also, perhaps you could argue, a bit of a spoiler, but they give away the whole sequence about losing his mother, which is, to this day, it's absolutely heartbreaking the way it's created, where her mother basically has an hour and a half left of lifetime, and she's 2 hours away from him. So she's running in his direction, he's running in her direction, and would it make it together on time? Because you can gift time to people close to you. And oh my God, in terms of a hero journey and the transformation from essentially passive to active in this world, talk about loss, to really get someone to take action. And then we have the voice from, I think would be the timekeeper, played by Cillian Murphy. The poor are meant to die. That's how the system works. And now, back to your point earlier, Roger, his whole mission as the hero is to completely demolish this system. And then we move into the third segment, which is then a montage again of running around and fighting and so on. But what this does much better is everything's cut much shorter. There's no kind of extra seconds or half a second there that you don't need. But also, I would argue, it does a much, much better job to show the work of Sir Roger Dinkins, the cinematographer. The name may be familiar to some of you, well, because you've seen his work on The Shawshank Redemption, which we've talked about on film marketing, Fargo, Skyfall, Sicario, 1917. This is the kind of guy that they had on board to film this movie. And of course, you've got to show his work.
Yeah, no, I think this is a absolutely perfect lesson in how important the trailer can be for a film, and it's almost a great coincidence that there are two in existence for this film, one bad and one good, and it just shows you how important it is. One of those trailers could have been responsible for the low audience figures and the fact that a lot of people don't know this film exists. Whereas if the second trailer had had wider coverage, let's assume that it only got shown in India, then the film could have been so much more successful than it actually turned out to be.
No, absolutely. And for me, it's then about lessons. So even accomplished filmmakers need time to get that trailer right. You know, the very first version, you've been there, I've been there, all of you listening, your video case studies, your vlog, your everything you do, you know, give yourself time to go back, or don't be afraid to go back and release a different version altogether. Because after a good night's sleep, you know, you've been there before, where sometimes I'm stuck and I just don't know how to cut that scene, or I don't know how to come across. And actually, you've got to walk away. You've got to walk away and sleep on it. Now, don't get me wrong. In the context of the film release, they were up against that deadline, literally.
Yeah.
Time was running out. So I have some sympathy with, you know, well, we've got this trailer. I'm going to call it this to be sympathetic. Let's release that, but very, very quickly, let's move on to, let's say, a much finer and more engaging cut altogether. So I'm going to ask you then, Roger. People have said this is one of the most underrated sci-fi movies of all times. Would you concur?
I think so. I mean, I've seen it at least 3 times. I think I saw it on an aircraft at one point as well. And it's definitely one of those films that I've had downloaded on my iPad, because it's the sort of film I just think I can dip in and out and watch episodically. I just love those sorts of stories which have that sort of observation to make about society, but surround it in a sort of science fiction premise, which is why I like Logan's Run as well. It's just one of those things. So definitely underrated. And if you haven't seen In Time, you know, great performance by Justin Timberlake. You know, don't be put off by the fact that he's predominantly a pop singer. You know, it's a good performance. And Amanda Seyfried as well, probably best known for Mamma Mia, puts in a really good performance, albeit she's pretty much totally unrecognizable from Mamma Mia, because in Mamma Mia she had blonde hair, whereas this she has black hair, so you might not even recognize her as the same actress. But a very, very good performance from both the leads. And Cillian Murphy, as you say, is always good in every film that he's in.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much, Roger, for suggesting this format of doing a deep dive and detailed breakdown of the trailers. It's just been fascinating, and hopefully we'll do that again. Let us know, everyone, if you think that it's an interesting way in which we can do film marketing for you. Remember also to suggest films for future reviews. This was episode 86, everyone. It has been an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you, Roger Edwards. Everyone, thank you for your support. Please leave comments in usual places. Until the next one, go out there and make sure your marketing is done right. I was Pascal Fintoni, and he was Roger Edwards.